What does Generative Minds do, and how long have you run the business for?
Generative Minds is an AI education and software development company, and we teach businesses about how they can use AI.
Why did you decide to start Generative Minds as opposed to another type of business?
The reason for starting the business was the realization that more people could do good things in the world with AI as an assist.
What could a school done to encourage or support you and others into entrepreneurship more?
Pointing out that that's an option would have been really useful.
What are your plans for Generative Minds in the future, and do you believe you'll set up any more businesses?
The next phase for Generative Minds is to really
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 9th Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast as part of the Enterprise Education in Secondary Schools programme. My name is Richard Leighton. I'm the entrepreneur in residence within the Brett Centre for Entrepreneurship. That's part of the University of Liverpool Management School. We're here this morning with the Year 9s within UTC, the studio, based in the Baltic Triangle. This is a competitions class, so it's a class for extracurricular activity where the students work on different challenges across the academic year. Thanks to Mr. Carey, the sector skills champion within the school, for supporting the Enterprise Education in Secondary Schools programme and the episode today. Also thanks to Jay Thacker, a Masters of Philosophy student at the University of Liverpool, who helps and supports us to create the podcast. Our entrepreneur this morning is Alex Keyter, and he runs Generative Minds, which is an AI-based business. And our two students that we've got with us, who are very going to kindly interview Alex, are Willow and Alice, and I'll hand it over to you to ask the questions.
So, what does Generative Minds do, and how long have you run the business for?
So hi guys, Generative Minds is an AI education and software development company. So that means we go out and we teach businesses, students, all people really, about how they can use AI for running their business, for starting new businesses, for just having fun. We also teach people how to build software with AI. And then on the software development side, we build applications for people as well. So a couple of things we've done, we did a triage system. So if you've got a problem going on in the Liverpool City region, you can go to this chatbot and you can say, hey, I'm really struggling with my mental health. And it'll ask you some more questions about who you are and what you do. And then based on that, it will say, oh, why don't you go and see this organization that's near where you live, because they can support you. So the idea there was that you don't want to diagnose people with AI, but you do want to direct them to where they might get support for whatever's going on in their lives. The education side's been the most exciting part, because there are lots of people who are aware of AI, but don't really know how to start using it, especially in the business context. And a lot of my customers are sort of 40, 50s, and they've had to get to grips with computers in their lifetime. And now there's a new way of doing work. And so it's an even bigger adjustment for what they do. The business has been going for 2.5 years now. And so each year has been getting better and better. Been doing more client work, growing the team as well. I've just had my first round of interns join the business. So I've got 2 interns at the moment, as well as a couple of project groups running from the universities to do research for me. It's been good.
Why did you decide to start Generative Minds as opposed to another type of business?
The reason for starting the business was the realization that more people could do good things in the world with AI as an assist, something to support them. So back at the end of 2022, I'd started playing with ChatGPT when it came out. One of the first use cases I had was for grant applications. So I was living in the Baltic Triangle at the time, and the mayor, Joanne Anderson, came to the area saying, we want people to run community projects to reduce waste and improve recycling in the area. And so I started to think like, oh, well, what could I do here? And then she mentioned that there was a grant opportunity for like £6,000 or up to £6,000 for projects in the community. I'd never written a grant application before, but me and my good buddy ChatGPT put together the grant application. First time I've ever done it, and I was successful. I got £6,000, and we ran some like clothing swap shops in the area, which essentially stopped 2 tons of clothing from going to landfill. And I had that realization that, I could use AI to do more good things in the world, and actually a lot of people could probably do more things than they thought themselves possible of. There's a lot of times when you want an assist, if you want support for, a business idea, or even just like, what do I make my mum for her birthday, right? The full spectrum of things you might need help for. And I realized that using a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the above, you can take ideas from your mind and bring them to life with a little help from the AI assistant. I suppose the realization as well is that, a while ago I used to teach languages. So I used to teach secondary French and Spanish. And this is kind of a language challenge for a lot of people, like how to talk about these things and what it means. And so I already had the teaching background, so it sort of made sense to go out and teach people this time about AI rather than French.
During your time in secondary school, what were you like and were you as entrepreneurial as you are now?
I didn't think I was as entrepreneurial as I am now. I've definitely developed confidence as I've gotten older. But I know the spark was still there. When I was in primary school, I remember a friend of mine and me, we made comic books and we tried to sell those. We didn't get very far, but, so there was an element of like trying to make something happen. Year 9, year 10, I was the kid selling sweets. You can go to Costco or Macro or whatever and go wholesale big tubs of sweets and then sell them out. But I kept on giving them away for free to my friends, so that didn't really work out either. I think I just about broke even, but ate too many sweets for my own good. I would say, I know, essentially what led me to the entrepreneurship was a certain amount of me being fed up of the jobs I was in, not really having scope for me to decide what I was doing. I figured, it essentially became this, I can't find a job where I get to do what I want to do, so I'll just make a job where I get to do what I want to do, if that makes sense.
You're pretty socially entrepreneurial, aren't you? Sort of, I tend to sort of do something like that, trying to sort of sell sweets at schools, but then I'd probably be giving out as many as I was selling as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things I struggled with, especially at the start of the business, was working out how I help the people that need it the most. So a lot of charities and third sector organizations need the support that AI can provide, but they also lack the funding to be able to pay someone. And so you can't just deliver work for free, because then you can't pay rent and you can't take your girlfriend on holidays. And she gets mad about that. And so, so you need to, I needed to find a model whereby I could work with sort of bigger clients to generate lots of revenue. And then from that, I'm able to go and give back to like community centers and organizations, which I've slowly been able to do, but learning which to prioritize has been like a big challenge.
What were your favorite subjects and what did you like best about school?
What did I like best about school? I really liked languages. I really enjoyed, maybe it's because I got to go on, I was lucky enough to go on like the school trips. So I did like my Spanish exchange and my French exchange. I did enjoy like physics and maths and things as well, but that's just because I was good at them. I think, I don't know, what else did I enjoy? Anything like problem solving, right? We called it systems and control, which was essentially like electronics. And I built like a safe where you had to I had to do the circuit board for the keypad, and then I had to do the coding in pick basic for trying to make that work and things. And so I don't know, anything that was tinkery, I've always been quite like to try and solve problems and things. One of my lockdown hobbies was literally pulling, during lockdown, lots of people got their houses done up. And so there were lots of skips with wood and timber in them. And so during lockdown, I was just pulling timber, wood out of people's skips. And then I used that to build furniture at my flat. Just because I had, there wasn't a lot else going on. But yeah, I don't know. What did I enjoy? I enjoyed making things. I think that's the most exciting part of school, when you get to come away from it and be like, this is a thing that I have imagined into existence. If that makes sense.
What could have school done to encourage or support you and others into entrepreneurship more?
What would they have done? I think pointing out that that's an option would have been really useful. I think there's this big narrative, especially when I went to school, that you complete your subjects so that you get some grades, and then the grades allow you to go to the next level, right? To college, and then to university, and then to a job. I just don't think that model exists anymore. The world that we are moving into is already so different from the world we lived in 10 years ago, especially, or 10 years, 20 years ago, right? If I finished secondary school in 2015, we'd only just started getting things like Uber and Deliveroo and Airbnb in 2013, 2014. And so the economy shifted, and it's going to shift again as more and more people are able to make games, music, art, whatever it may be, using AI as an assist. I know I would be giving, if I was in charge of schools, I would be giving kids as many opportunities as possible to make things, and then showing them that actually that's valuable and they can go and sell those, and that you don't need to have a grade, you just need to have your idea and go and do stuff. If that makes sense.
Did you go to sixth form in university after studying your GCSEs, and how did that help you develop your entrepreneurial skills?
I went to sixth form, yes. What did I do? I did A-levels in Spanish, Spanish, maths and physics were my A-levels. That was really good because I got to go again on trips. I started doing au pairing. So I'd go away and I'd teach English and I'd improve my Spanish and the likes. That gave me the confidence to walk into places where I knew nobody and just go start a conversation. Anyone that thinks that you learn languages people that say you learn languages by doing grammar exercises and stuff are lying to you. The way you learn languages is you go and speak to people, and then they speak to you, and you just get better that way. I also went to university, but the first time I went to university, I went to study physics because it's what I thought people wanted me to do. I thought it was the safe bet, and I hated it. I absolutely I fell apart as a person, had a bit of a mentee B, wasn't okay, and so eventually I quit that, and I was offered the same weekend I quit that. I was offered a job to teach English in Spain. And so I went and decided to do that. But in a way, that was actually kind of a good exercise because it taught me that you can stop things. You can stop and it's okay, right? Just because you said, oh, I'm going to go do this, or I want to become this person. If there's friction and if there's a certain amount of you have to do things that, feel the fear and do it anyway. Things make you uncomfortable, but also you can change, you can pivot. And that's been really helpful for the business as well, because I've realized that, the first version doesn't really matter as long as you put something out there. And then if you realize how you feel afterwards and it's not a good fit, then go do something else. Because nothing is set. You just have to, as long as you show up as the person you want to be and you're nice to other people, it doesn't really matter. Then I suppose the other, to the university point of what I learned, I did societies. I did a lot of volunteering. So I ran the Spanish and Italian society at one point. And we we catered for an event that we definitely, I'm not sure if we should have, but we basically like costed out and convinced this pub to let us use their kitchen. And we ran this like Spanish tapas night and made a pretty good like profit for the society, which we then used to get a discount on people's like end of year celebration ball tickets. I think something that people don't tell you enough when you're younger is that you can take risks in like, you know, trying something out, trying out a project or organizing something. And if it goes wrong, it literally doesn't matter, right? Like there is a certain degree of you come to school and you come to college and you go to university. Yeah, they're going to teach you stuff in lessons and that's fine and all. But the rest of the time, you're there to experiment and try things. And that's, you know, that's something I think we lose as we get older. But it's actually something that's really useful to do, especially with the AI world, right? To like bring it back to what I do in terms of generative minds, like a lot of people are scared to try things, and especially with computers. So for adults, a lot of adults have experienced computers in a way that if you do something wrong, it breaks the computer. And so they're quite hesitant to like try different ways of doing things with ChatGPT or whatever. But you need to try lots of things because that's the only way that you learn to use the thing. If that makes sense. Yeah.
What did you do before starting Generative Minds, which you kind of touched on before? And did you work anywhere else, like, or run a business? And what did you learn?
So it's been, very crisscross. I went to, the second time I went to uni, I did a German and Spanish degree. And then I went into teaching French and Spanish, to like secondary school kids, so like kids your age, who in the school I was in did not want to learn French and Spanish. And so again, that was another time in my life where I did that for about 6 months and I was like, no, this just isn't, like, I can't hack it. And so I pivoted, I left that and I moved up to Liverpool. And then I started working, doing like teaching assistant work, and I started doing hospitality and things like that. Eventually I started working at a students' union where I was helping, I had such a good experience running societies and running events when I was a student, so I helped other students to do that. And I know in all of those roles, again, there were like a lot of constraints and rules about like what you could and couldn't do, and the way that they thought you should follow process. And I know it's probably the ADHD, but when people tell me to follow rules that I don't think make any sense, I really struggle to follow, to comply, essentially. So I know it's good to learn how other systems work and how other people run their organizations. But essentially, it taught me to kind of trust my own gut, right? It's 2025. ADHD and the way my brain works is not, in certain contexts, it's a barrier and it's a weakness. But that just means you're playing the wrong game. Go and play a game where it's a strength and you can just smash it. It's kind of what I learned from those.
What's the best advice you could give to a student that's looking to start a business of steel?
I think the best piece of advice I've heard is you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So you're always, or in the software world, we've got the expression of, if you're not embarrassed by your first version, you shipped too late, right? And so what it really means is just put it out there, right? Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. As long as the main thing is that life is essentially a feedback loop, right? And so unless you're in the loop of putting an experiment out there, and it's the same with business, really, you put an experiment out there, you see how people react, you gather that as data, and then you use that data to improve whatever it is that you're doing. But if you don't put something out there, you don't collect any data, and then you can't improve. it's the same with these AI models, right? Like when you use ChatGPT, the first time you use it, you get data from it coming back to you, right? You put in some data, you put something out there, it gives you some data back, and then you decide what to do next. And so, yeah, the main thing is just like go start, gather data, see what, try something new each time. And if it doesn't feel like it's fitting with you, then that's okay, go do something else. I suppose the other piece is that like it should be fun. Like if you don't like what you're doing, there's a certain amount of like you need to be determined and do things for delayed rewards. But also like if you don't see the point in something and you're being told that you need to do it, like it's okay to ask why. And if the reason why isn't very good, then it's okay to pick something else to go do.
What are your plans for Generative Minds in the future, and do you believe you'll set up any more businesses?
So the next phase for Generative Minds is to really scale up the work I'm delivering. So at the moment, I do these workshops in businesses and starting to do more workshops with universities where I teach their students to use AI to build their own startup idea or business idea. What I would like to do over the summer and coming into September is to teach other people to teach the materials that I already do, and then to have them go out and deliver that to way more organizations. Because the problem I have at the moment is that I can only cut the hair that's in front of me. And by that, I mean, like, if you've got a barber, you can only sell so many of your haircuts to somebody because you can only cut so much hair in front of you, right? And as like a teacher or an educator, I can only educate a group at a time, right? Because I can only be in one place. And so the next step for the business, the growth stage, is to teach other people how to teach what I currently teach, and then to send them out under the Generative Minds sort of brand to go and deliver that to more people so that more people can start to embrace AI and the opportunities of tomorrow, today. Yeah.
If you're a secondary school student again, what type of business would you look to start and why?
There's a couple of different verticals. I think one of them is communication. So anything that's sort of teaching other people around you to be more confident and to be better at communicating their ideas, I think is really useful, because we've kind of got a bit of a communication crisis at the moment. Lots of people are very scared to pick up the phone because they would rather message you as like a text or a WhatsApp. And lots of people are very scared of public speaking. And the problem is that as the AI systems become more sophisticated, you won't really be able to tell online if it's AI generated or like an AI communicating with you or a person communicating with you. But chances are you only really want to put trust or buy things from a person, right? You want to build relationships with people. AI can handle the busy work and the admin, but you really want to build relationships with people. And the way you do that is speaking to them and showing up for them. And so if I was looking to start a new business, I would definitely be teaching people like communication skills as one. Another is technical skills, and maybe not so much in the world of bits and bytes, but more in the world of like matter. And by that, I mean like electronics, I mean like plumbing, I mean like engineering of like real physical objects, because that's really hard. It's increasingly easier to go to software and then teach it like that. A third, I suppose, is like make games, make cool things. If you can use AI to, Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, last year said, nobody needs to learn code anymore because AI can write code. But actually, as the thing becomes easier to do, it makes sense for more people to learn how to do it, because then more people can, it's not that AI is writing all the code for you, it's that AI is assisting you to write code. But you still need to understand how it works, because otherwise you're just a consumer and not a creator. And so maybe there's something also in like AI assisted programming and software development. But that's my business. So, just buddy up with me and we can see about franchising or something. I think those are the main ones.
That's all the questions. That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much to Willow and Alice for answering the questions. I've known Alex for a few years now, so it was really lovely for me actually to kind of hear a bit more about your background. And we're actually running an AI powered startup school in a few days or so time to some students on campus as well, so that should be brilliant as well. What we're going to do now is we'll open it up to the audience for some questions, so I'll just go in and amongst it to get some questions. So obviously if you've got any questions for Alex in particular, maybe it's about his background or his business, or maybe even if some of you have some ideas, some startup ideas in the world of AI, if you've got something that you want to share with him as well, Alex might be able to give you a bit of advice on guidance and on how to kind of get that out there. Is there anyone? Yeah, we've got first question over here. I'll just make my way through everyone.
With AI, there's been reported problems of AI and global warming and sustainability and stuff. What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, so the sustainability issues are real ones, but they're not exclusive to AI. They're across all of the ways that we use energy and petrochemicals more broadly as a society. The larger organizations in this space are, so your Microsoft, your OpenAI, your Google and the likes, all have sustainability commitments such that they are going to become carbon neutral by 2030, realistically by 2035. The sustainability issue is quite a challenge because these systems require large amounts of energy to create, to train. But then afterwards, the inference cost isn't actually as much. So it's about the same as you posting a video on TikTok or YouTube or the likes. Anytime that you're creating data that way, it's about the same energy cost as using ChatGPT or similar. So there is a challenge there. But on the flip side, these tools offer an opportunity for us to educate and provide information to far more people. And so if we're able to use these tools, if you take the Khan-Migo and the AI for educational personal tutoring example, if you're able to use these tools to educate more people to be sustainability engineers, to educate more people to be researching renewable energy, sustainable fusion energy, hydrogen, all of the above, you can have way more people working on those problems and moving towards solutions that resolve for everyone. I think a wider challenge that we've got is that the way that we use electricity currently benefits people who have already been through the development cycle in society. So if you are in the UK, or if you're in the US, which is quite developed, we are quite developed nations, then it's okay if you sit around and go oh, well, we need to make sure that we're net zero and all the likes. But in countries that have low levels of infrastructure, so Africa is your huge challenge area, India and China and parts of Asia more broadly, if you can't provide basic infrastructure for those people, then they're at a net disadvantage. And so the techno-optimist in me says that if we can improve these systems to a point that we can provide education to as many people as possible and then infrastructure to as many people as possible, then you have more people available to work on the sustainability problems in a way that is equitable, rather than sort of leaving it in the hands of the developed few. But these are all wider societal questions of, is it worth investing the environmental cost to develop new capabilities in the models with the hope that those then enable more people to solve the problems in the future? Or should we just blanket ban or massively and prevent the development of these tools? Sadly, the way the market is structured, or the world is structured, is that chances are development will be prioritized over sustainability. But that's largely always been the case. So I don't think it's like a track, like it's not, I don't have all the answers. But my hope is that by developing these AI tools, we give people more opportunity to be able to tackle environmental challenges in the future.
It's a really good point. And I've heard a number of people say before in relation to that, the more people you actually bring out of poverty, which obviously educating people, giving people access to infrastructure and opportunities, the more they then become aware of their surroundings and the environment and things like that. So obviously if you're just in the day-to-day just thinking I need to just generate some money to survive, if you can kind of move past that, then your immediate thoughts after that become about your community and others sort of around you. So I can kind of see how that will hopefully work. But equally to your point that you made, I've seen in the past kind of saying, oh, if we just invest and if we put into this, the other side of that will be. But quite often there seems to be more revolutions like industry-wise that occur.
Some of the challenges we're really not ready for. So if, let's say, healthcare is a really good domain to talk about it, if we massively improve the quality of healthcare such that using AI interventions and diagnosis tools, we're able to extend quality of life and lifespan of lots of people worldwide, well, our infrastructure isn't set up for people to live 100, 200 years, right? Our society is structured on the premise that people only live from 80 to 90 years in the UK. But if lots of people are going to live a lot longer and they're not working anymore because they've retired at 67, 70, like, how is society going to adapt to the fact that these people have the best quality healthcare that's ever existed and therefore can live longer, but these people have, they don't want to work, or they can't work, or they don't work anymore, and we've got less and less young people who are able to look after them. That's one of the areas that we're not quite sure on. But the humanitarian argument is that we should encourage, or we should create technology which enables as many people to have the best quality of life for the longest time that's possible. But that's a big, gray area of we don't know how to deal with that. People using these tools to build, games or websites or tools themselves. If any of you have stories of ways that you've used AI tools to make something, I'd be really curious.
It's quite an interesting sort of discussion. It's potentially opened up another avenue of business for you in Generative Minds. They're actually supporting schools to kind of manage AI in the future, how it's done responsibly. Yeah. Even sort of working within the university, obviously there's talk about things like that as well.
I think to my point earlier of what businesses would I start if I was at school, there's definitely stuff around content. So you live in a world where any of you can become movie makers, any of you can become games developers, any of you can become software developers. And those are all really exciting things, right? You don't have to have Hollywood budgets to make a full-length feature film anymore. You can use the tools available to you. You also live in a world where all of that content is essentially going to clutter up the main form of communication that most people use day to day, which is the internet. And so the really critical skill that everyone kind of needs to learn is how to talk in front of large groups of people. How do you move hearts and minds? How do you build strong relationships? And then obviously that technical skills with your hands as well, I've mentioned.
Yeah.
The wider question there is, how do you teach yourself new things? If you can learn to teach yourself new things, you can go out and play with these tools, and you can go out and learn other languages and learn lots of things about the world. You're going to get really far. And I know that's not necessarily, I don't know, it definitely wasn't my priority when I was 13. I was playing World of Warcraft and eating lots of Doritos. But
I love a Dorito.
I love a Dorito too. Chili heat wave all the way.
Definitely.
But there is scope for like, how do you support, like, because in some ways the teacher is no longer the expert in the room because everyone is starting with these tools simultaneously. And so there's going to need to be discussion and experimentation and play. And we're not always great at that, right? Especially the older you get, the more you realize, like, the more you adapt to your environment being quite like stationary, right? You know what your job is, you know what your family, like, relationships are because you've built them over time. And now there's this big question of like, well, how do you adapt? And adapting and changing are scary things. And that comes back to my point earlier, that if you communicate and you can open discussions and you can explore new things together, then you can all collectively move much further than just staying where you are and letting the world rush by you. Is that okay?
Yeah, awesome. So we have a couple of closing traditions on the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast. Our first closing tradition is to Simon Squib you and ask you, what's your dream?
My dream is to help create a world where anyone can use technology to access healthcare, creativity, justice, and opportunity, regardless of where they come from or what circumstances may have limited them in the past.
Awesome. I think that's a really nice dream. And hopefully, obviously, AI will be a tool that can educate a lot more people than are currently being educated, and will lower a lot of barriers out there. I suppose some of the areas that you kind of worry about is that if you can't get the individuals that need to gain access to that as quick as possible, then those that already have the access could potentially accelerate and get away. But hopefully something like that won't happen.
It's a challenge we already have in society. If you come from a privileged background, you access better education, you access, different social circles, there's still an element of societal silver spooning. It's just not built on aristocracy anymore. It's more, it's very much the case that like where you're born and the postcode you're born to like has huge impact on like where you go in your life. But if, I set out with Generative Minds to ensure that nobody gets left behind in the age of AI. And if we can educate more people and we can provide more tools to anyone and everyone, then hopefully those barriers will reduce and we will have a more equitable society for more people.
Well, our second closing tradition on the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast is to Stephen Bartley you. So Diary of a CEO, we've got a couple of conversation cards. I'm not sure which one does which, but if you want to choose one of the two decks there, and we'll choose a card out of that to ask you the question. You can give the card to Willow.
So I pick a card
or Alice, to read the final question for you.
So I pick like any card?
Any card you like.
Levels?
Completely random.
Let's go for that one.
So we'll go for that.
If you could go back to one era in civilization, what era would you pick why, and what would your job be?
If I could go back to one era in civilization, if I get to pick my job, then I quite like the idea of being a philosopher in ancient Greece. That sounds like a good job. Because then essentially, so the philosophers were essentially personal tutors to the rich or people in power. So like Socrates was tutor to Alexander the Great. And that was essentially your job, right? Is you hung around with people talking about difficult things, and then you went and tutored these young people in values and like how to live their lives and how to be good leaders. That sounds like a good job. Alternatively, I think it would have been quite good to be, or quite interesting to be like a sort of witch doctor in like South America from the Incan Empire or similar to that. I think that would be quite interesting. But that's just because it sounds fun.
Both sound fun. Yeah, definitely. We actually had the entrepreneur who was on the week before, Sam Byrne. He's done some really interesting things. You were talking about tutor, and he basically finds his favorite entrepreneurs or podcasters, and he uploads transcripts of them into ChatGPT, I think it is, and he creates virtual and entities of them, and then he can talk to those. So I think kind of, you're in an AI sort of business. So I mean, the great thing now is we can almost sort of upload people's intellect or what they've said, what they've done into software and be mentored and tutored.
I think Amazon hit the nail on the head when they called their little speaker thing an echo. Because that's essentially what it is, right? You leave this data behind, and then you have an echo of the data that you've produced. And I think, being able to access more echoes is going to be quite interesting. We call it Socratic dialogue, where you engage with somebody who asks you questions and then unpicks what you've said to help you understand better. And if people are able to engage with AI tools to do that, then the level of understanding you'll have will just dramatically increase in the world. But it's only if you choose to engage with it that way. It's the same way that if you choose to engage with Instagram as a creator, you get a very different experience of it than if you just are a consumer. Or YouTube's a really interesting example. Only 1% of the users of YouTube create content for YouTube. And it's like, you only have to be part of that 1%, and then you could start to like generate wealth or have influence in that space.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't take a lot actually to get into the top 1%. I believe if you create about 20, 25 podcasts, you literally go into the top 1%. A lot of people don't realize if you start doing something and doing it consistently, a lot of people talk about, the top 1%. It's like, well, it's actually not a lot of concerted time, energy and effort. It's about consistency to get yourself into the top 1%. But obviously within something like what YouTube, for example, it's probably the top 1% of the 1% are the ones who are really generating vast and tremendous amounts of income. But that doesn't mean that if you can't get yourself into the top 1%, if you're consistent and spend time, energy and effort at it, that you can kind of continue to move up that and then hopefully generate yourself a good income doing what you enjoy and what you love.
Yeah, I think for me it's never been about like, it's still not like, I'm not too fussed about like the income, right? As long as I'm earning enough to have a good quality of life, take my girlfriend on holiday, all that jazz, then it's the main thing. And I said this earlier, is like, you need to just have fun. Like, if you're not enjoying it, then go pick something else. Like, you might as well be enjoying it.
Brilliant. That's really awesome. Well, thanks ever so much, everyone, for your time and attention. Hope you've enjoyed the 9th Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast that's part of the Enterprise Education in Secondary Schools program. Thanks again to Mr. Carey, the sector skills champion at UTC, the studio in the Baltic Triangle. Thanks again to Jay for helping to produce the podcast. And finally, thanks to Paul Brett and Sir Peter Rigby for their generosity to allow us to run all of this. And we look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Take care.